Welcome to the Social for Brokers podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Sam Mason, a mortgage and protection broker at Mortgage Medics in Brighton. Now, if you listened to the podcast before, you'll have heard I've had Sam Murphy on, who is the director of Mortgage Medics, which the company that Sam Mason works at. That must get a bit confusing when you're trying to send emails. I bet Sam Mason gets a few Sam Murphy's emails and vice versa.
Gives me opportunities to steal some of his clients that are coming in looking for Sam.
So the reason I got Sam Mason on the podcast is I've seen him really step up his LinkedIn game these last few months. And when he's intrigued to get him on the podcast and talk about how he uses social media to gain mortgage leads. After chatting through LinkedIn messages, he admitted that the majority of his business actually comes through Instagram, and a lot of it comes from friends and family. But I wanted to have a chat about how did he find the balance between personal and business content to, number one, not bore people with his business content, but two, remind people that he is a mortgage broker, and how he does that in a compliant way as well. Because as we all know, we've got to be careful as to what we say and that we're not overstepping boundaries. I also wanted to talk to him about, and this is one thing that I saw on his Instagram account today, is he offers personal voice notes to send over like a personal client's budget. And it's a little link in his Instagram profile. So we're not going to give that away straight away. You're going to have to listen into the podcast, but we'll get into that as well. So we're going to get into the balance on social media and how he successfully uses social to get business. So Sam, without further ado, I welcome you to the Social for Brokers podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate you inviting me on.
No, it's great. The reason I kind of got in touch with you is I saw you on LinkedIn really step it up in terms of content. And obviously it's a great profile picture, but it wasn't so much the profile, it was the way that you interacted with a lot of content. And that's something we'll talk about a bit further on. But have you made a conscious effort these last few months to say, right, LinkedIn, I'm going in on it. I'm going to be interacting every day?
Yeah, I think I have. I think historically, LinkedIn's always been used or, perceived as a platform to find jobs, hasn't it? So I think previously, before becoming a mortgage broker, I kind of used the platform to put content out there that would potentially attract, business owners and things like that whilst I was trying to get into the industry. So I think I've always made an effort to kind of put something up there, but it's for, different motivations. And I think it's definitely a hot topic at the minute, isn't it? With social media, generating leads from social media. So I have definitely pushed forward on that to start putting some stuff out there for clients as well.
Awesome. So we'll talk about that shift in content, because it takes a brave person to completely change their social media content, because you feel like you've built up so far. But we'll talk about that shortly. So you work for Mortgage Medics now in Brighton. I've heard it's a great company to work for. It sounds like you get a lot of support down there. But what did you do before Mortgage Medics?
Yeah, so before Mortgage Medics, so I started off in insurance. Actually, I did a 12-month apprenticeship with them. That was good. It was great, but it just wasn't kind of the progression that I needed. I then moved on and did a year at Lloyds Bank. So that kind of got me a little bit more into the finance and dealing with mortgage collections specifically. So I was kind of helping people that couldn't pay their mortgage, and discussing payment plans and things like that. So it's a little bit nicer being this end of the journey with people that we're trying to get into the house rather than potentially kick them out. That was difficult conversations we were having every day. And that's when I started just researching CMAP and becoming a mortgage broker. And I realised quite soon that being a mortgage advisor at a bank was very restricted. There wasn't the opportunity to potentially earn a little bit more as well. So I did CMAP independently, and then I joined a national agency. So I joined Sequence, Fox and Sons.
Oh yes, yeah, I know you mean, yeah.
Fox and Sons, yeah. So did a couple of years there. Again, it was a very, very intense environment in terms of like the sales aspect of things, and in terms of actually building your own client bank, there wasn't that opportunity. It was just dealing with first-time buyers that were coming in or purchasers, and essentially trying to win the business off other brokers as they came in. Apologies, I'm just getting a phone call there.
That's right. Busy people. I get this a lot, to be fair, because you're still running a business, and I'm asking people to take an hour out of their day in the middle of the day. So don't worry at all.
It's like that, yeah. But yeah, so I did a couple of years there. Yeah, I did a couple of years there, and that was great because it kind of fast, accelerated my learning, because we were dealing with so many people day in, day out. But same as I said, that kind of pressure cooker environment just wasn't quite for me. I wanted to, be completely independent, whole of market as well. That was one of the things, and just really start kind of building relationships with my clients and building a business within the business.
Awesome. So how long have you been at Mortgage Medics for now then?
Approaching 12 months now.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it was April last year, so 10 months now. So yeah, nearly a year.
And you do quite a bit of commuting, don't you, between Brighton and London?
A fair amount, yeah. I mean, now that we can do the flexible working and working from home, it makes it a little bit easier, because I'll work from home on a Friday, I'll spend the weekend in London, and then I'll come back on a Tuesday morning, spend a couple of nights there, and then I'll just loop round again, come back on Thursday.
Ah, right. Okay. Yes. It's nice to be able to do it, I suppose, isn't it? And the great thing is, you're almost tapping into two markets there as well, aren't you? So do you live in Brighton, do you? Or
yeah, so we've just sold the family home, actually, which is where I was originally living. So at the minute I'm waiting to buy my first place, actually. So looking to buy a place and then hopefully get a lodger in the spare room, and and just dart between the two. And then my girlfriend, she's got a place in London that we kind of rent together. So that's the setup at the minute.
the two most expensive places in the UK to live, Brighton and London.
Yeah,
I mean, just
yeah.
for Dubai, just go and
Yeah.
Dubai as well.
I must admit, it's nice being up in the city and then just going back. It's almost like I go back to a holiday home, back by the sea, and then just retreat back to the city. So it's nice. But like you say, you can tap into two markets. I think I've got such a great network, growing up in Brighton. I've got such a great network in Brighton already. So it'd be a shame to just leave that behind. But then I've also got the opportunity, we're in West Hampstead, which is quite a nice area as well. So you meet some great people here and stuff. So it's definitely that opportunity as well.
Yeah, and we'll get into that shortly as well, because you've got two different kind of communities that you could tap into. And talking about your friends and your generation, they are a lot of them are on social media, and that's it's a very good way to build trust, isn't it? But what's the market like as a whole at the moment? We're having a little chat before the podcast started. There's a lot of people still buying, aren't there?
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, same as I said, we kind of, 2 years ago when Brexit happened, I was sitting at the end of my desk thinking, oh, it's going to go dead. It's going to go dead. And then it didn't. It just went crazy. And then, of course, COVID happened, and, was put into lockdown, and property market closed. And then after that, all that pent up energy just meant it went crazy again, and the stamp duty holiday. It's just been mental ever since. And coming into January, Feb, we had a lot of inquiries, people with ideas and stuff in January, and it seems to have all kind of trickled into Feb with actual business. So it's just been really busy, which is good.
Which is good. And I think the exciting thing for you, if you've been with Mortgage Medics for coming up to 12 months, we were talking about, you don't get many people that come to you for a remortgage. So in essence, your job is actually slightly harder than a mortgage broker that has been with the company for 5 years, because you have to build that trust with those people now, and you need to make a long-lasting impression that they will come back to you in 2 years. I suppose there's no exact answer to it, or no steadfast answer, but what kind of things do you do to build rapport, especially over the phone, which is harder if it is over the phone and not in face-to-face? What do you do?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, we've got a great brand anyway. Sam's built a brilliant company. So a lot of the inquiries that we get through the company, they've already done a bit of research. They've seen the reviews and got great reviews. So that initially helps. But I think it's just little things like, in your first appointment, not just talking about mortgages, but talking about that client, talking about their interest. Because essentially people buy from people, don't they? And I think that's one of the biggest things in terms of building rapport, is just talking about them for a little bit. What they want to buy, what they're hoping to achieve, what they do for work, and what they enjoy. I think that's definitely something that I do. On top of that, going the extra mile and making them aware that you're available out of hours if you're up for doing that, and things like that is key, I think.
And it's a lot. There's been a lot of talk about on LinkedIn and a lot of social media that it's hard to stop work at the moment, especially during working from home. It's hard at 6 o'clock to turn off from work. And yes, I believe, the mental health benefits of making sure that you do switch off. But when you're starting out in a company, or you're trying to build a database, do you think sometimes you have to put those extra few hours in to enable you to reap the benefits in a few years' time?
I think 100%. Like in this job, you kind of get out what you put in, don't you? And
Very good point.
I'm still relatively young, so I started when I was 19. I'm 22 now, so I feel like I've still got a few years of steam in me.
Wow.
That
So
might
you've done the
change.
bank side of things, you've done the corporate with Sequence, and now you're in like a bigger mortgage broker. How does it
Yeah,
differ? How does it differ between Sequence and Mortgage Medics then? Because that must be a different dynamic.
it is a completely different dynamic. I mean, Fox and Sons, it was predominantly people who were out viewing. Our estate agents would get them in front of us, and then we'd have to convert the business. So I did see a huge transition in the amount of selling that needs to be done in terms of selling your service, because when I started, I had clients coming to us, and I'd give them like a 10-minute pitch, and towards the end you just hear them going, well, yeah, I know that already, so can we get
Yeah.
on with it? I just want a mortgage. So there was that as well. There's much less of winning the business. You do find that a lot of people come back as well, whereas with Sequence before, it was very in and out. There's a lot of people, you might see 10 first appointments in a week, but you might only actually start working with 2 or 3 of those, because there's already advisors that are working with those clients. So
And
um,
it is tough. These obviously Sequence and those larger companies, they do have a lot of marketing power, and that
yeah.
do have the high street presence, which is just a massive thing, especially with the state agency. But I think the difference with the likes of Mortgage Medics is you can almost push your personal brand more so, because it's very hard for a larger corporate company to turn around and say, John Smith, you go and push your personal agenda.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know what I mean? Your company, yes, you still work under the Mortgage Medics. You still have to be compliant and make sure that everything fits the company brand. But you can still use your network and your face to really push and get that business. Do you enjoy that part of it?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think you get so caught up in the kind of corporate environment that you tend to switch off from anything else. It's just Fox and Sons does your work, and then you go home and that's it. So it's been nice to kind of put myself out there a little bit more and get people that I already know and friendly faces kind of approach me and ask for advice, which has been great.
Awesome. Right. So social media. What is your favorite platform personally and for business? And they might be the same.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, personally, it's probably Instagram. That's got to be my personal favorite. But then for business, I would probably say a mixture between kind of Facebook and Instagram.
Right. That's interesting, because I've always thought Facebook is the number one platform for mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
How do you use Facebook to generate leads or to put your name out there? What do you do?
But it's nothing too flashy, to be honest, or nothing too pushy. It's more just, I'll look at my day at the end of the day and I'll go, right, well, what's happened today? And normally something interesting's happened, or some kind of, success story or something like that. So I try to just put educational stuff out there just to, catch the eye of your everyday person and just go, oh, actually, that applies to me.
Mhm.
So things like success stories, good reviews, that's always nice, social proof. That tends to get a good amount of shares and likes and stuff.
You're very good at, I've looked at some of your content. You're very good at making a balance between the personal and the business aspect.
Mm.
How much do you think people should be sharing personal, and how much do you think they should be sharing business?
It's a tricky question, really, but I don't know, maybe kind of 50-50. I
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong with that, to be honest. Same as my point earlier, people buy from people, don't they? So if they see that you're kind of quite similar to them, you've got similar interests, then there's no reason to say they're not going to do business with you. You can't just spam them with mortgage jargon constantly. I think it's good to show a bit of your real side as well.
Yeah. And another thing, talking about the personal content, is I like the way that you do have the balance between the two, because you get people get used to who you are, but then they will
Mm,
know about the business that you can offer them, or the service that you can offer them.
definitely.
What you're very good at as well is, I had a little look, a little stalk, which everybody does with social media before.
Yeah, yeah,
You respond to a lot of comments within Instagram, don't you? You do
yeah,
have that interaction with people. Have
yeah.
you had any leads off the back of that, or would you say that's more of a nurturing, like a way to nurture your clients?
Yeah, I've had a fair few, just off the back of, keeping in contact with them and interacting with the posts. I do get a fair amount of messages, asking questions here and there, and probably 60% of those people, are not quite ready now, but I feel like in the future they're people that will come back, because I've spent the time to, to give them that little bit of advice here and there, or some tips and tricks,
Mhm.
when they need it the most.
And do you use Instagram stories much to document your day, or you're more about the actual, just the posts?
Oh, yeah, I do like an Instagram story. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, I think it's the way it's going, isn't it? People love
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit more personable, isn't it? They can see what you're up to kind of day to day. And I quite like the questions feature and the Instagram polls and stuff like that. So often I'll put stuff out like ask me a question and property related, and someone will ask a question which will then I'll post the answer to, which helps the wider audience, and then you might get a few more questions off the back of that, which works quite nicely.
So what Sam was talking about there in terms of the polls on Instagram, if you upload an Instagram story, at the top right hand side, if you press, there's a little square with a smiley face in it. If you press that and press poll, you could do a poll. Can you think of one off the top of your head that you've created in the past, Sam?
Yeah, something I've done recently is, are you looking to buy a house in the next 12 months? And the reason I did that is because I feel like there's this misconception that people can only come to talk to a mortgage advisor when they're ready. And I think it's good to, educate them that actually we're here to set you up on a bit of a plan as well. So
yeah.
I think something I did recently was, are you looking to buy a house within the next 6 to 12 months?
Okay.
I had a few yeses, which meant, I could spark a conversation with that person, again, nothing too heavy, but how's it going? Is there anything else I can help with? And normally that sparks a conversation there.
That's a good way of doing it, actually, with the polls, because what you can do with the poll is when you set it, as the person that's created that poll, you can see the people that have responded yes and the people that have responded no. One interesting way that I saw, and this is a bit of a tip, from Jan Murray, who runs like a marketing company, is she would never do a positive and a negative. It would always be two positives. So are you looking to buy a home? In the next 6 to 12 months, it'd be yes, I am. Or in the red where it says no, change it to after the next 12 months. So it's almost like we're still looking to buy. So they can never say no. So you can almost introduce yourself to both of them. If you have a look at the content, what she does is she's doing like when she released a podcast, it's kind of, have you listened to the podcast yet? Yes, listen to it, or I'll listen to it soon. So it's almost like it's a commitment, and it's quite a clever way of doing it. Something for the listeners as well that you can implement. But I like the way that you're using polls to generate that interaction. You don't necessarily have to upload to your grid then, because you're uploading to your Instagram stories and keeping people informed, aren't you?
Exactly that, yeah, and it's more interactive that way as well, isn't it?
Exactly. The other thing that Sam Murphy spoke about, and it was interesting before we put this podcast in, we were talking about very similar, is you use your current network, so friends and family, to get them as clients, don't you? You don't rely on brand new leads. And what Sam Murphy was saying was, you've got a ready-made audience for you there. How do you you don't want to be that sleazy salesman. You don't want to be like, I'm a mortgage broker, come and use me. But how do you introduce your services to friends and family, Sam?
Yeah, again, I think, the likes of social media makes it so much, so much easier to do that and make yourself, continuously relevant in that person's mind. So that's where I think Facebook comes in really handy for me, because that's what I tend to use for friends and family and staying in contact. So again, just getting educational content out there really does help. And I tend to find that I've got quite a good community in that space. So, they'll often share it, which then just goes towards other friends and family that might not have seen it. So it works really nicely for me.
And before we walked in the podcast, you were saying, look, when I was 19 and I started this, nobody needed a mortgage because it's very hard. It's very hard to buy a property at 22, let alone 19. But what you're doing is you're almost keeping in touch with these people. So hopefully in the next 5 years, if they're looking to buy, you're going to be the first. You're putting the groundwork in now. So when they are ready to buy, you should be the first person to do that. And the way that you're doing that very cleverly is, yes, you're telling them about your personal life, but you're uploading that informative content. Where do you get the ideas for that type of content, Sam?
Again, just looking at my day, something might happen, and I think, oh, that's a really good situation. I think people would benefit from understanding what happened there. So throughout my day, I'll tend to, if anything happens, I'll just jot it down and I'll just kind of put it in a notes page. And then when I feel like posting, I'll kind of bring that to life again.
Okay. So
generally just
an example.
Yeah, I can give you an example. So I had recently like a client who was struggling to get a certain amount of borrowing. And we did a joint borrower sole proprietor application. So for the listeners that don't know, that's adding maybe a family member on that's got an income, might be slightly older, usually a parent. So something like that, where we've been able to boost their income and what they're able to afford. So something like that works quite nicely.
And then, so you would do a post around that explaining what a joint sole proprietor mortgage is.
That's it, yeah, and just put a bit of content out, not too heavy. Again, just some light content, so people understand that there are other options out there. Because I think so many people just write it off. They might be earning a smaller income compared to the area that they're living in and the house prices. So often they'll write it off completely. But actually, things like that can bring it to life for them again and make them think that they've got options.
And it informs the people on that subject, but for me, it presents you as a thought leader. So even if I don't want anything to do with joint sole proprietorship, but I was looking at a buy-to-let mortgage, in my head, I'd be like, Sam was talking about something that I've never heard of before. So therefore, he could probably help me with my HMO, because I know that he's talking about something that's a bit out of the ordinary or a problem that is solved. If I see you solving other people's problems, well, I'm much more likely for you to allow you to solve my problems as well.
Yeah, this is it. Even if it doesn't directly relate to them. And, another example would be a client that, came to us for just a lot for remortgages. His deal was coming to an end. And actually, after looking at his situation, there was plenty of equity in his property, which then enabled us to do what's called a let to buy. So we converted his current residential into a buy to let investment, and he was then able to purchase a new property. So he only came to me for a remortgage. He ended up with 2 properties at the end of it. And his old property was then financing his new property. So he's in a much kind of better situation. So it's little things like that that just open people's minds.
Yeah, and you guys at Mortgage Medics are big on the side of blog posts and making sure that you're always keeping people up to date with relevant content. You're a very informative mortgage broker, and you can see that runs through with the way that you offer services. It's not just a case of come to us to transaction, boom, 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 done. It's right, let's explore your options. You could do X, Y, or Z. And it's just presenting yourselves as thought leaders. And then what you do is then put that into social media then, don't you?
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Right. So let's talk about a strategy. So we're going to pretend that you're moved to the top of Scotland. You've got a laptop, a mobile phone, and an internet connection. What would you do to start generating new business, Sam?
So I think first and foremost, making sure that I'm on all social platforms. So I say all, but I'd probably say Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'd probably dabble in TikTok if I was 300 miles away and had the time. So what I would just work on kind of consistently posting content. I think that's something that I don't do enough is, sticking to it. When I've got good traction, I tend to get busy again, and then I fall into a trap of, not keeping up with it. So I think setting out a plan to continuously do that.
Yeah.
I think on top of that, I even had the idea of potentially setting up a podcast, even if it's not property related, but if you can get good traction on a podcast, then I guess indirectly you can introduce people to your services and, go down that route as well. So I think if I was 300 miles away with a laptop and a phone, they're the routes I'd go down.
So what would you, because it's interesting, because I speak to people about talking to people in the local community. Would you talk to people in the local community, or would you make it like a national podcast? Would it matter that you're at the north of Scotland? Would you want to hit that community, or would you want to hit the UK?
Yeah, I'd probably, again, the tools that we've got now in terms of working from home and stuff, I don't think there should be any geographical limitation. So I'd probably focus on getting out to the UK, but you might think otherwise, focusing on one location. What would you say?
I mean, I'm a big advocate of hitting the community hard and using your local knowledge to really hit home to people. So the podcast, what I would do is I would probably find all the most influential people. So the person that owns the bakery that's been there for 30 years, the person that owns the toy shop, the local hairdresser, the local florist, the local dog walker. And I'd interview all of them and almost become a bit of a local celebrity, so to speak, and really help people understand the area, but you help with mortgages off the back of it. It's almost like you indirectly sell your service. I mean, you look at most adverts, if you think, say if there was an Aviva life insurance advert, they don't talk about how much life cover they can get you for 15 quid a month. That's essentially what they sell, isn't it? They'll talk about how the family can be affected. They'll talk about the emotion of it. You're selling the emotion of that local community, aren't you?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And TikTok, do you use, I know you mentioned TikTok there. Do you use TikTok at the minute?
I don't know. I got as far as downloading a profile and setting one up, and I just haven't.
Just
I
haven't
just
got
haven't
into
set
it.
anything up.
I tell
Yeah.
you, it's a really good. There's two different, and we spoke about one of them before we came on the podcast. Was that Joe Bartlett, the home buyer coach,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Anish Patel as well. He's very good on LinkedIn, but he does it very differently, and it could be a way for you to dominate because it's more informative content. And there's another account, lettingaproperty.com. There, we had Katie on the podcast, and she helps with all the digital marketing there. And it's just all about information. There's nothing salesy whatsoever. It's what you're doing on Instagram and Facebook, just in a completely different format.
Yeah.
What Anish Patel does is he takes one video on TikTok and sends it to all the other platforms. So he'll upload it to Instagram, upload it to Facebook, put it on his YouTube channel, and it takes 12 minutes. He says he's got it down to 12 minutes.
Right. Fun.
Same video over like 5 or 6 platforms, which I just thought was really, really useful.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot as well about kind of LinkedIn and finding a niche on LinkedIn. That seems to be a really, really hot topic in a minute.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see your view on that as well, just about, how important you think it is to find a niche, and whether that be a specific target market or specific type of mortgage or specific type of client.
I think it's probably best to do a specific type of client. Now, I'm not a mortgage broker, so I haven't done it. So I'm not speaking from experience. I'm just seeing what successful people have done. And with LinkedIn, it's very hard, I can imagine, starting out as a mortgage broker and saying, I'm only going to look after, say, footballers. And that's what I'm going to go for. Because if somebody comes and says, I'm a first-time buyer and I'm a builder, I want a mortgage, it's very hard to turn them away.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to turn them away, but I would build my whole LinkedIn audience of just footballers. And it doesn't matter. I would be commenting on all of their stuff, interacting with them. Football is quite a hard one to crack, actually, because it would be a slightly higher net worth. So, but say you could have people that work in the local area that are nurses. Do you know what I mean? You could have an audience of just nurses that work in the Brighton and Hove area, Brighton and Hove Albion football team, or London.
Yeah.
And I would recommend niching down, because then when you're creating content, and I was speaking to Marcus Nansen on one of the podcast episodes about this, his recruitment company just focuses on mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
So his content just has to be aimed at mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
Whereas if he was trying to recruit every different kind of industry, it would be so watered down.
I guess it's the same with your business, isn't it? With social for brokers.
Yeah,
agents. Yeah.
All of my stuff just goes to property professionals. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
So that's where, if you were to say target nurses in Brighton, all of your content could be, I don't know, we've got the Queen Elizabeth in Birmingham. It could be, do you work at the Queen Elizabeth as a nurse? Speak to us about your mortgage. And they feel as if that content is directed straight at them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
But what you've got to do, and this is what I do in the beginning, is I got rid of all the people that were in my industry, because they're never going to take a mortgage. They're never going to take social media from me. It's the same as you. There's no point having a massive audience of mortgage brokers, because they're never going to use you.
This is the thing, yeah. And same as I was saying before the podcast is, historically, I've always used LinkedIn for finding a job or, trying to get into the industry, because I was quite young starting in. It was quite difficult to kind of get traction and get some interviews under me and, get a job offer. Really, that's what I was struggling to do.
Yeah.
So I just connected with every mortgage broker pretty much in the area. And now I see that a lot of my interaction is mortgage brokers and other industry professionals, which is great, because, all publicity is good, but it's not necessarily what's going to benefit me in the long run.
Exactly, and it's just making that switch, isn't it? You've got to be selfish almost. It's like I've spoken to somebody who runs a caravan motorhome company, and he's at the caravan and motorhome company this weekend. There's no point in him going around all the stalls trying to sell people motorhomes, because they've already got them. Do you know what I mean? But if he goes to another convention and tries to sell motorhomes of people that are, do you know what I mean, interested, it's just so much easier. It's like, I always think this is a negative connotation, but shooting fish in a barrel sometimes. If you've got that barrel full of fishes that are your ideal client, it's so much easier to get them.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.
That's how I would use LinkedIn. But I just love seeing you all over LinkedIn. I like interacting with you on content, and I'm sure you'll take it to the next level and make it a success. The last question I'm going to ask before we leave is, where do you see people choosing mortgage brokers in the future?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think I definitely don't think. Well, I say that I was going to rule out kind of Google searches and things like that then, but I think people are always going to do their kind of research. I think we can definitely rule out, just sitting by the TV and seeing an advert about a mortgage broker. That's probably out the window. I've got to say, kind of Instagram, Facebook, all the social media platforms that people are constantly on, and they are the ones, if they're constantly on there and they're seeing content that's based around mortgage brokers, then naturally I feel that that's where people will find them.
And if there's people like you putting that personal edge out there, I'm much more likely to warm to you than I do John Smith, who I don't know anything about him, but I know that you're a football fan, you've got a dog. Do you know what I mean? Your missus lives in London. And do you know what I mean? That's where I can relate to you more so than John Smith, who has just uploaded about mortgages for the last 6 months.
This is it. Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for coming on, Sam. I really appreciate it. As a thank you, I'll donate £10 to a charity that's close to your heart. Which charity would you like me to make the donation to?
Yeah, so British Heart Foundation, if possible, Chris. Cheers, mate.
British Heart Foundation. Yep, great charity. Well, thanks very much for coming on, Sam. Really appreciate it. I hope people have got some really good information here about how to balance the personal and the business and how to utilize your network, because you've got friends and family. You just need to make sure they know that you're a mortgage broker without ramming it down their throats, don't they?
Exactly that. Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Thanks very much for coming on, Sam.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Right, so I've had to jump back on the podcast because I missed one vital question that I really wanted to know the answer for. So I know we'd finish the podcast and we might slip this in somewhere, but I wanted to speak about the voice note that you've got on Instagram. So on your Instagram profile, it says, contact me for a personalized voice note of your budget. What is that all about? Because I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a good idea. I mean, it's not something that I've seen either. And I think if I was a consumer and I come across that, then all we have to do is click on the link, and it's linked to the inquiry form that we already look at. So if a client's going to inquire for a mortgage, we'll send that inquiry form. We'll have a first appointment with them. But I think it's just a nice way to interact, really. And I haven't pushed it that far, but I've probably had 10 to 15 people do it.
Awesome.
And I think it's been nice because they click on it, it sends me through the results. I'll do a quick affordability check and I'll look at the potential costs involved, and it'll be as simple as send that voice note straight to the potential client. Hi, my name's Sam. Thanks for getting in touch. This is what I think that you could borrow potentially based on the figures that you've given me. This is what I think that it's going to cost you. If you need anything else, let me know. And we'll basically have a conversation off the back of that. And I think it's just a nice little touch, really, just to have like a personalised. I'll put a few bits of information in there, and I've had good feedback.
The thing is, that could easily be put in an email. Yeah, people are doing that day in, day out. I get another email and I'm like, yeah, Sam, he tells me that I can borrow 150 grand around about this much. This is how much it might be. You know what I mean? You have to be very vague because you haven't got all the information. But for me to have an Instagram voice note whilst I'm sat on the sofa, I'm like, oh, Instagram voice note. What's this all about? Do you know what I mean? It's not an email. It's funny. I saw a meme the other day about how 20 years ago, we get post through the door and we're like, yeah, it's post. You get an email, you're like, oh my God, I got an email. Now you get a letter through the door. You're not bothered about your emails. Do you know what I mean? We shift that focus. And I think a voice note is a real good way of doing that. So you'll do like a bit of a recap, send it over to them and then say, come and shout me if you need anything else.
Pretty much, yeah. This is what I think you could potentially borrow based on the figures. This is what it might cost. You probably need a deposit of X. If you want to have a further discussion, then let me know. It works quite nicely, and like you say, it's something a bit different, isn't it? I think where I probably got the inspiration from, I think before, it was like last year, I inquired to get some work done to my teeth, and they sent me like a day after, they sent me a personalized video, and it had like my photos, and they put like diagrams on there, and I thought that was really, really good.
Awesome.
Obviously, that probably takes a little bit more work. So I thought voice note is nice and easy. They can play it nice and easy, and they've got that forever then, haven't they?
Yeah, I've seen actually Sam Norris, who deals with a lot of commercial mortgages. Every follower that he has on Instagram, he sends them a voice note.
Really? Yeah.
Hi, mate.
Yeah.
How we doing? Thanks for following me. Hope you check
Yeah.
out my content. Look forward to connecting with you. And that's so, I don't know how he does it. He's got like 30,000 followers. I'm like, mate, I would not have the time for that. But it's then, like, for example, the teeth, you probably won't go anywhere else now. Even if it's a year, 2 years down the line, you'll always go to them. You're like, they put the effort in. And you feel
Exactly
almost
that.
like a debt to them, don't you? That I want to go and get my work done with them.
That's it. Yeah. It's not just getting treated like a number, and it singles you out from the competition, doesn't it? So yeah, for sure.
Right. That is going to be the end of the podcast now. I don't know where we're going to split this in now. But no, I just wanted to jump back on and have a chat about that. But again, thanks very much, Sam. Cheers.
Cheers, Chris.